All right, we are live. It is episode 100. I am Michael Askins, technologist and architect, and this is the Technology Architecture Solution Engineering Show. This is our 100th episode, and in the virtual studio, I'm going to belay that. I'll do it for him. In the virtual studio, we have Dev. That's what he normally does. Technical difficulties with the live stream on his part. He's getting himself together, but we also have. I'm going to talk to this here soon, but I keep saying returning champion, friend of the show, but we got to give a different classification to this one. Mr. Chris Safurlis. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, doing great. How's it going?
Doing all right, doing well. So here we are. Last year we had a jam packed full of people. The live stream was good. It was all right, but we filled the crowd, and we had some customers, we had some partners, we had our good friend Chris and Microsoft. And I thought this year, let's do this. Let's pair it back to those who had the most influence on the show this year, and kind of talk about what we went through from a show perspective, technology perspective, the whole gambit of everything, like what our experiences were this year, because they're used to hearing our voices. So I thought maybe we should just keep it a little smaller circle this time. I had people, Chris, want to get on a waiting list. I was like, can I come and listen? And I'm like, well, you can, but there's a little corner in my office. It's not very big. It's not like the studio here. Like I call it my studio. It is a studio, but it's not that kind of studio.
I've got plenty of space here. Send it to Vermont. We got tons of room.
That's wonderful. Speaking of, first of all, thank you so much. I know you're out for the end of the year, and you still took time to jump on the show. We greatly appreciate you jumping on and taking a little bit of time away from your family. So thank you so much. And if family's on the other side of that door, and they probably can't hear me, thank you, family, for that.
Worries. No, actually, the kids are out sledding because we do have snow up here, and nice. The wife is heading to the pharmacy to grab a little bit of an injury remedy I had today. So
hope it's something not bad, but
yeah, it shouldn't be too bad.
Good. That's good. Well, you are an outdoorsy guy, and you do the skiing and the fish. You do a lot of outdoorsy stuff, and I think you're in a really nice part of town or part of the country for this time of the year, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's I'm up in so I'm in Stowe, Vermont, which is about 2/3 of the way up into Vermont.
Okay.
So maybe an hour and a half from Montreal, where I am here. So pretty far north. And because of the location and the proximity to Lake Champlain, we get the snow effect, the lake effect for snow. And so they've already gotten over 5 feet of snow up here. Whereas down where I live in Mass, we've gotten maybe 6 inches total, maybe. So yeah, no, it's a great spot. I'm looking out the window at a beautiful mountain range, and the sun's working its way down over there. Yeah, so it's a great spot to be in. So yeah.
That's awesome. We got about 6 inches of rain last night, so needless to say, with my water issues, I'm not too pleased. But yeah, so we get lake effect snow, not quite like you do. We get it off of Lake Erie, and we get the Canadian. We call it the Alberta Clipper. Comes in out of Alberta, Canada, and it drops either massive amounts or it just blows right over us. So fun fact: our part of the world, our part of the country, we get a lot of our big storms in March, like St. Patrick's Day blizzard in Pittsburgh. Like we get a lot of March snowstorms. But I see here that we do have Dev, so we're going to roll him back into the mix here. So I'm going to add him to the stream now. I purposely kept him off. He gave me the signal, and I was like, no, I'm not going to pop your head off yet. I bring in, come off mute, and say hellos there, Dev.
Yeah, technology is always fun. I probably don't sound as great. I'm mobilizing the studio today. I forgot a cord, or at least I thought I had a cord and I didn't. So that was always
fun. So we know what to get you for next year's Christmas is a little cord caddy, right?
Well, yeah, the Yeti Blackout uses an outdated, not even a micro USB. It's I forget what the other one is called, but
the B connector.
Yeah, the B connector. I was just like, what the heck is? I went to plug in. I was like, oh no. So yeah, it was.
It's all good. It's all good.
You're with words where may have been said, but
you're with us. That's all that matters. So, Yeah, so I wanted to get everyone together, and it was pregame, and on our 99th, we talked about this. It was a little apologies to those who are regularly hearing us on Fridays, regularly dropping like clockwork. We this last month we got kind of weird because we wanted to time this show with our 100th, and hats off to everyone that had something to do with any episode all the way up to here. This usually happens on these types of shows at the end of shows, and people just kind of gloss over it. So I'm going to put this in the front of the show. So bear with me for a second, everyone. I want to get out some special thanks to people who helped us, make this show possible. So I'm going to keep looking at my notes here, just make sure I don't forget. I'm going to forget somebody. Sorry if I do. But so special thanks for those, everyone supporting us. First, number one, Chris, you are a difference maker on our shows. We really do appreciate you coming. It shows in the numbers. I know we've shared some numbers with you before, and it shows in our numbers when you're on that there's a good bit of following that you have and a lot of influence. In our top shows, over half of them have some of your participation in it. So we really appreciate you being part of the show and evangelizing on behalf of Microsoft and just evangelizing on behalf of technology, period. So we really appreciate you being here. Also, we had last year Ari. We had the collab corner for a bunch of segments, and year end the year before, we had a bunch of aspiring people on. We'll get to aspiring here in a minute. Joe Kostler, Dean, a bunch of other individuals we've had on, and super special thank you to Aspire and Mike McLean for making the show possible. So, as everyone has known, Taste Labs went through metamorphosis last Christmas, and we merged into Aspirant. We've made that pretty well known. And one of the things we did was keep the show going. We have Aspirant as the sole sponsor of the show, obviously with our partners and our friends. So we super grateful for the opportunity to have Aspirant keeping this going and helping making it a little bit easier on us. Also, giant shout out to someone who gets hardly any credit for anything that we do, and that's Missy. She's the one that she herds the squirrels in my head. And that's a very hard thing to do. You can ask anyone who knows me. There's many squirrels going in many directions, and somehow she gets them to line up and good productive things come out. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you and everything you've done for us. And I also have to super shout out to three of our biggest fans. So one of our biggest fans back in the JG Wentworth days was, Brad. We have three new of our biggest fans. That's Nathan, Zachary, and Mario. Anyone who knows me, my nephews and my son, they are religious listeners, and they tell everyone and their parents about our show. So at least mine does. So hats off there to you guys. Arts and graphics. Anytime you see any kind of crazy art and graphics, I use Art by Sophia. Nepotism there. We won't go into that, but this is the biggest one here, and I think Chris and I when he's going to be on, we have this text message dance. That's a normal kind of a thing, and this is the gratitude we have for our families who are we're constantly disrupting our family schedules. We're delaying activities, or we're trying to wedge the show around activities. They deal with our shooshes. I mean, my family does. I'm like, open the door, shoosh, I'm recording. Without their understanding, this would never happen either. So, and I know Chris, you and I, we go through because we have little ones, and
Same.
it takes a lot to kind of bolt that together. And you are a content creator too, as well. And you do a lot of videos on YouTube, and you know what that's like, right? So hats off to our fans. And Dev, thank you, sir. You're co-pilot, but you get a hats off there too. Anybody have anything to add? Anybody I forgot, or anything you want to toss out there? Great.
That covers it from my side.
All right, rolling on. So normally that stuff happens at the end. I just want to make sure everybody gets their due shout outs now. So looking back at 21, there was a lot of changes that happened in 21, personally and from a business and technology perspective. So let's kind of go around and talk about anything personally happened for you, anything new, anything happening with your Dev. I know you have a new role that you're moving into in the day job. Why don't you kick it off, Dev? What's happening with you in 2022?
Yeah, no, like you said, from a day job perspective, moving into a new role as delivery manager for the cloud solutions team. So it's always fun. But it doesn't feel like anything's really changing, just the title.
You do the job before you get the job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm super excited and looking forward to that. Yeah, I mean, from a personal change or just anything, not much. Well, I'm engaged now, so that's
Oh,
Hey, congrats. That's
thank you,
exciting.
thank you. Having back in September, and we're starting wedding planning and stuff like that, and which is always fun. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of change in the next year and a half. But yeah, no, I mean,
cool.
it's about it. I mean, yeah.
Chris, anything new in your world? Anything changing with you?
There's always new stuff. Yeah, so let's see. We got a few exciting things going on. So I just recently accepted a new role right before Christmas, and so if any of my customers listen, sorry, this is a tough way to find out, but yeah. So I'm actually heading over to right now. I'm in the Northeast unit in Microsoft, covering 13 high tech enterprise customers, and I'm moving over to the manufacturing org in a different role. So I'm moving over to what's known as a client technology lead, or account technology strategist was the former title of that. So oftentimes you'll hear those folks introduce themselves as the CTO of the account team. And so rather than a strict Azure and SQL data focus, it expands my focus to pretty much everything Microsoft that enterprise customers could want, need, or use, with my own personal focus, which will be on data, right? And so it's kind of going across the three clouds, across Surface devices and sort of everything that Microsoft has out there, and all the amazing things that we're providing. But it'll all be rooted in data with my background there and sort of my passion for it. And so, really excited to be supporting 7 new customers starting January 3rd. And so we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted. And then the other one is I'm a few months into writing a book. I don't think I got a chance to announce it on the show, but yeah, writing a book for Pact Publishing on Azure Cognitive Services.
Nice.
And so yeah, we're a few chapters in and approved and finalized, working on a few more chapters. So we're going to cover, things like knowledge mining solutions with cognitive search, and all the fun things you can do with that. All of the different capabilities with the decision category and the speech category and the vision category, and all the good stuff there. So it's certainly it's been interesting. It's been challenging, right? You have to be super disciplined to write a book, but so far putting out some really, really good content. Everything that I've been able to put together, and that is considered to be final draft, if you will, before it goes to publisher, has been received really, really well. And so looking forward to that. Hopefully, rolling that around sometime mid-April. That'll be done.
That's awesome. Is it going to be a co-author, or is it sole authorship?
It's co-authored. I've got a guy that I've been working with for the last 17, 18 years now, and he's building the full out solutions. I'm kind of putting together the POC, and then he's building an actual practical application. And we're building it around a fictitious seafood company, where basically I'm able to take sort of a parable from working in the seafood industry and identifying areas where the manufacturing and the organization in general could enhance productivity by adopting AI, right? And so where cognitive services has a lot of those capabilities that are right there, available through an API. It seemed like a really interesting thing when we were approached to write it.
That's awesome. That's definitely good news.
Thanks,
Yeah. Writing is difficult. It's I think the biggest thing is to just get going. It's just as soon as you get started,
you got to be disciplined. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, it's let's just say I'm not doing it for the money.
Rarely do you?
Yeah. So yeah.
Yep. That's cool.
Hopefully by the next time I'm on, I'll have one more exciting announcement. Been working on something else too. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So does that mean we need to change the data download title since you're going to be covering like the breadth of everything, or are
No
we going to keep
way.
it
No
dated?
way.
Okay, all right.
No.
Woo!
Actually, what's really exciting about it is that I now, because the portfolio goes so much wider, I've got more of an opportunity to have the, you know, behind the scenes and secret sauce to all this is that working at Microsoft doesn't mean that I know everything there is about CRM and all the other tools that we have. I mean, with things like Mesh, and HoloLens, and all of these other areas where I've never really touched or worked on because they weren't in my portfolio. And trying to stay ahead of technology, there's only so much you can consume.
Yeah.
So now, where I'll be working on a couple more certifications for the new role. It's a requirement as a Microsoft employee. And just having more of a perspective on some of these other tools, it actually gives me an opportunity to talk about more fun, cool stuff.
Yeah. And it probably strengthens the ability to actually take your passion of data, like especially when you start talking about CRM, right?
Yeah.
It data extends to all areas, right? Number one
Yeah.
strategic asset any organization has. It's just how you consume it, what you're doing with it, and it's definitely good
Absolutely.
stuff. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
CRM, ERP. I mean, there's huge implications. I mean, and even in running the cognitive services, a cognitive search chapter, right? Getting some really, really interesting perspective on how much capability there is when you do something as simple as point cognitive search at a SharePoint library,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's just a site or list or the whole thing, to be able to go and index all of the documents and the documentation and pull them all back, and then be able to have just this incredible search based on things as simple as just full text, right? But then also semantic search where you're getting a secondary scoring system, and it can summarize what the entire document is about in a single paragraph, and then taking it even further into enhanced OCR capabilities and image recognition and pulling entities and all this other stuff out of it. I mean, there's just so much cool stuff in there, and I'll be doing some video blogs about them and stuff too. And then if we want to get under the covers, we can do some of that stuff too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But Dev probably perked up a little bit when you started talking SharePoint.
Yeah,
He got his birth into the world with SharePoint, right?
it's a beast. It's a
Oh,
beast.
yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit here. Dev, what was the best thing of 2021, technology wise? Not, I mean, I'll save you getting engaged and your family. Okay, that all takes precedence over. So we don't need to do the low hanging fruit. Let's go with like tech or something related to our world. What do you think the best of 21 was?
Oh man. I didn't see the show notes before this. I wasn't know. I didn't know I was going to be asked this question. The best thing at 21.
It's a better reaction.
It is a better reaction. I don't know. There's been lots of different things. I mean, there's been so much. We've said this till we've blew it in the face that there's been so much advancement in so little time because of the pandemic, and with especially with modern workplace and things like that.
I thought you were going to throw out Viva.
No, Viva. I mean, Windows 365 is definitely up there. Just for the ability to spin up machines very quickly and not have to leverage like Azure Virtual Desktop, formerly Windows Virtual Desktop. From that, I just think that
formerly Citrix in Azure, which is still an option.
But Windows 365 has been really great. I know we played around and tested with it and did different things with it. Actually carried out some email and SharePoint migrations through a W365 machine just to see how that worked internally.
Chris, you're gonna like this use case for W365.
Yeah.
So there's a particular tooling that we needed to have, and we didn't want to have a big high powered machine running out in Azure and go through all the security crap. So basically, it does like an IMAP redirection from legacy system to a new system. And for those, I'm throwing hands around if you're listening to this. So we're just like, we need tooling for ShareGate and we need tooling for Code 2. We're like, let's just stand up a W365 machine, threw it on there, did the migration, tore it down. It was like cost so much less. It was productive, right?
Yeah. No, that's great. And what's funny is obviously I use Windows Virtual Desktop and stuff like that. I haven't used the Microsoft 360 or the Windows 365 stuff just yet. But I know I need to, for my personal finance stuff, Quicken and all that crap. I've always been sort of dependent on one machine, but then I've got to remote into it from other places if I'm doing something and stuff like that. And it's just like, just recently it kind of dawned on me, is like, why don't I just put it in there? I've got a Microsoft 365 subscription already. I mean, like, I've already got it. So why not just use it, And so that'll be a project for the next few weeks for me, actually.
Yeah, so you're gonna love it, right? So Dev and I, the day it was released, well, we did it some of the beta stuff, but the day production happened, GA happened, I stood up an instance. It wasn't even high powered. It was like the second from the bottom, and I put Visual Studio Code on. I put like all the computer nerdy stuff on there. And then for those who are our business listeners who don't know all the computer nerdy stuff, I put in like Visio and Publisher and like a bunch of other just regular commodity apps on it. And I was working, and it was responsive. It automatically found I had two screens and wanted to leverage multiple screens. I was like, oh, nice. Okay, the remote client's handling that well. And then I wanted to see what it looked like on my Samsung Tab S7 Plus. And I was like blown away. It was like incredibly productive. Then I'm like, okay, well, I have an Ultra 21. What if I'm out somewhere and a customer needs something or I need to do so? So I'd put it on my Ultra 21. Amazing. I put it on my Ultra 21 in DeX mode with the desktop experience. Amazing. It's nothing but amazing. And I'm not saying this being a shill, because I call the hard thing when the hard thing's there to call. It was an amazing experience. And I still, to this day, I use it for tons of stuff. In fact, I was going to get one of the new Surfaces as when they were released, but I'm like, do I need to?
Do you need to? Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's good stuff. What do you think the best for 21 was, Chris?
I think this is a weird thing, but I think delaying the rollout of Azure Synapse Gen 3 was probably best. Obviously it's near and dear to my space and the things that I do. So let me back up a second, right? So Synapse obviously has gone through a lot of changes just in the couple of years since it was originally announced. But there was a big push, probably late springtime, that we're going to have Gen 3, by the fall, call it. And, we're telling customers that, there was a lot of capabilities in there that helped us compete with some of the other cloud data warehouse leaders for specific features. I still think we're the leader for an all-up tool. And we rolled out what's known as the analytics continuum. And really what that is just what it says is that we came to the understanding that analytics are not something that are just one and done, right? You're not just setting it up and walking away. It's an evolution, right? So whether you're doing AI and ML use cases, you're doing advanced analytics, right? You're doing any kind of predictive modeling, anything like that. It's a continual process to update and refine and improve, plus improving that user experience. And so when Synapse said, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to include Spark pools, we're going to include Data Explorer, capabilities within the tooling, and they start adding these additional compute engines, as opposed to that single MPP engine that's been around forever, that works really, really well on tabular data, as opposed to now saying, well, we're actually going to make sure that we're covering the whole gamut for all of our customers. And so, if you need a cloud data warehouse where you are simply running reporting off of, tabular data, then a cloud data warehouse standalone might be good enough, right? Whereas Synapse and the team from Synapse realized that, hey, we need a whole lot more. In that realization, there was a bit of a step back to say, how do we really approach this so that customers appreciate everything that the tool has, that's available to it? And so I think by putting that on pause, and I think we'll see some announcements probably in January as to some updates on when some of those features will come out. I think it was a good step to make sure that something wasn't released that was less than mature.
Yeah, you're right. That is definitely a good call. The thing that Microsoft historically has been got dinged for was like the release cycles and putting things out a little too early,
Sure.
and I think they've learned a lot over the years. And when Satya took over, the mentality around how we deliver and using the tooling to build what we sell, that whole philosophy has changed for a more stable release of products. And quite frankly, as much as I get like stomp my feet, and Dev is all too aware, I stomp my feet. I want, like, I hear of a Teams feature that, or some sort of a feature I want, and I want it now. And it's like, it's better to give it to me when it works than maybe get it and then be all like, I got it. Now what do I do? Because it just
Sure.
doesn't work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. I can appreciate that. Looking on the other side of that coin, what was one of the, like, I use this phrase, worst? What's the worst of 21? But not necessarily worst, but maybe not ideal. It doesn't have to be like, oh, bad you. Aside from, pandemic and all the normal things that we're going to tack on, like from a technology or from what was the worst thing that happened in 21, or not ideal situation? Or Dev, why don't you take this one?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, probably one of the more recently happened, is that AWS has been having some challenges lately, with maintaining some connectivity to a lot of their data centers and stuff. But I think there was like 3 outages in the past month, I think, for various different reasons, things like that, and even
Well, okay, can I bump in? I'm gonna bump in. So everyone knows I'm a big Azure fan. Azure's my gig, right? AWS, GCP not. Every cloud has their challenges, right? So even Microsoft had a few bumps along the way this year. Everybody had a bump here or there, right? And so it's a matter of how impactful were those bumps and how fast were they up and running. So spinning that back to you, was it that detrimental that made it the worst, or do you think it's just more of one of those that just put a bug in the back of people's head, like, oh, it's unreliable?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a lot from my knowledge, from reading in the news and things like that. A couple of the outages were multiple hours long, and I think what made it a little bit worse was during and some of the main data centers that people run out of, like East US, and I think it wasn't like somewhere in South America or or anything like that, where there might not be more resources stood up.
They matter too. They
They
matter.
matter, but we're talking about a lot of the big companies and things out there. A lot of other people are going to be focusing on East US, things like that. I mean, even, and I think even something worse as I'm talking here that I've had to deal with in the day job to a certain extent, is this new Apache Log4j vulnerability thing that everyone's losing their mind about. I got a text from a client, and are we using this? For certain sites that we have, and I'm like, no,
yes, you are.
well, surprisingly, the one word, we're not using it. Thankfully, we are not using it. But hey, even my mom was talking to me about it, which is, she sees it and she says everything's, compromised or whatever. Most things are compromised. So, I'm sure it's kept a lot of security people up at night, especially considering it's used very widely across main things. And a lot of people don't know what it uses or what it doesn't use and things like that. So, I think that's a huge thing too.
So I'm going to toot your horn for you, since you're not going to do it for yourself. So you do more than Azure and infrastructure, modern workplace. You do a lot of security stuff too on infrastructure, especially on, the SaaS PaaS arena for Microsoft. You're like big into that space. You do a lot in that space. So it does not surprise me that when we have an Azure infrastructure customer and they see something, that they're reaching out to you immediately. So your skills and your lanes are much wider. It's not as focused as some of your counterparts out there in industry. So It's good to know that you're on top of that. Now the question is how many people are not, and will this be a problem that or a challenge that they're going to deal with? That's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, no, I mean, like for example, like even though we're not using it, like we've already, like Microsoft put out stuff for like securing app gateways that they've been using. If you can't secure your backend for whatever reason, like as far as when the web app firewalls up, and we even started seeing traffic come in from third party firewalls that are identifying as people like probing to see who has what. As far as when it comes to the log4j vulnerability. So it's been it's definitely been top of mind. We've been seeing the traffic, seeing people are trying to find places that are vulnerable and try to exploit it. So thankfully we don't use it. We didn't need to. But no, it's definitely something very concerning.
And here's where I'm the unabashed evangelist for Microsoft and Azure is that I know the solution and the customer you're talking about, and all the solutions are native in Azure, using the tooling inside of Azure with, some of the, like I'm not going to name it because we don't want to call out specific technologies and have somebody figure something out, but I know the exact customer and I know it's all native in Azure, and the visibility and the way you have it all tooled up, you get to see a lot of what's going on where, and it's pretty good. And it's nice that we have that ability, and say we as our day job have the ability to do that, but we as our partners with Microsoft have the capability of actually delivering that, as opposed to going out there and buying 8,000 SKUs and wrenching something in. And it's kind of good. It's real life. So if you're on the business side, this is a real life situation where everything contained in Azure native, secured, hardened. If you're not, maybe you should be.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep in mind though too, right? We had our challenges this year, right? The Active Directory challenges we had,
Exchange
challenges we had, Exchange.
Seems like 10 years
ago. It's kind of a weird one, right? But
yeah, it's still there though.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is quite a bit. One thing I will say. And I was listening to the Security Now podcast with Steve Gibson, right? I mean, the guy's a legend. I don't mind shouting him out, right? He said something really interesting recently. It was in it was Log4j or one of those episodes, where he just said, they were talking about the AWS outage, and, the challenge is from an enterprise standpoint, so many companies for so long worked so hard to make sure that they were geographically dispersed. And so that they had high availability and they had DR, right? And they had HA and they had backups and all that good stuff. And in the essence of saving money, right, and moving to the cloud, they somewhat took a step back from having those capabilities. And so now you've got these providers. I mean, there were a massive amount of internationally known providers, globally known providers, that were down for 6, 7, 8 hours in the most recent outage. And it's almost like we did this circle where we came back to not being dispersed geographically correctly, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And it's instead of making sure we had that uptime, making sure that the load was spread. And I think the last AWS outage was because, basically the data centers got overloaded with requests, and that's what started taking things down. And so, essentially now we've got everybody going back to the same place to try to do the same thing at the same time. And we're on all this shared hardware. So maybe it can handle 10,000 customers at a time, but it can't handle 100,000 customers at a time. You know what I mean? And so, I can't really fully blame them, right? They can only do so much. They can only offer so many SLAs, and it's something that I have with my customers all the time. Remember, an SLA is just a service level agreement. That means that you get credits back. It doesn't mean that you have guaranteed uptime, right?
Yeah.
It means you get money back if it goes down for over X amount of time a year. And so, I think that, for those business folks out there that don't realize this, just because you put it on the cloud doesn't mean it's guaranteed to keep running, right? Yeah. I mean, you're still sharing hardware with a whole bunch of other people.
Yep. You're right, 100% right. And Dev, before I toss it back to you for that last bit, I have a customer that we started this before the AWS stuff happened, and we're planning HA in Azure, right? Because their industry is one in where they really shouldn't be down, right? They can tolerate a little bit of down, but so we're planning this HA solution to, we had an Azure vision, and we're doing, the well architected and looking at all the various, models and trying to make sure that we're putting them in the right path so that as an organization, they're not going to suffer, or at least get a black eye from their customers that, oh, I couldn't do this because of an outage by your provider, or your provider couldn't handle it. So we're putting in on top of all the automagical stuff that happens in the back end of Azure to have high availability. We're putting other traps and checks in with solutions. So we're building it even deeper so that once it recognizes things are happening, it's going to do that automatically before it even hits that plane. So there are answers for this. Sometimes, they're costly, sometimes they're not. I guess it really depends on your industry and what your needs are. Dev, you had to throw in on this, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's interesting what you said, Chris. I mean, I think a lot of people think the cloud is something. I mean, and in all reality, it's not extremely different from what a traditional data center is.
Sure.
And
Sure.
And I think people put all their eggs in one basket and one data center, when in reality they shouldn't be doing that. They should be dispersing it just like they would normally would. You're just not seeing the hardware. You're just putting it in different regions and things like that. So, I mean, I think for people out there who are doing that, I mean, I think it's not, like you said, it's not on the Microsoft or Amazon. Yeah, you have the SLA, it's not guaranteed, but it's also on the customer to design a solution that, if something were to happen, like you can redirect traffic to a different region. It might take a couple milliseconds longer, but to happen, but making that happen, I think, making sure the solution is designed well that hasn't stopped. That that's going to be the same if you're doing it on-prem or in the cloud.
Yeah. Absolutely. It comes down to value, right?
Yeah.
What kind of value you're getting for the money you're spending, and what is your tolerance for downtime, right? And I feel as though, I run into a lot of customers that they just don't take that time to make those evaluations and understand, what are the cost benefits of running it, in 2 or 3 different ways, right? So, I would certainly suggest to people that they spend the extra time and find out what those things are. It's going to help them be successful.
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, you're both spot on there. There's a lot to go into, and you can, and this is not, plugging your friendly neighborhood consulting company, but like we see these varying types of situations, and it's a forest trees thing. So even if you're not born out of the traditional infrastructure and having multiple locations, what the cloud means, I mean, are you any better in East US 2 versus East US? You're across the river from each other. Should you be really dispersed west or central? Are you going to, as the sun goes? And like now we're talking the application layer. What are we doing for availability? Let's throw Redis on top, throwing all this technology in there, but it's only as good as you architect and plan it and validate it that it's going to be sound, right?
Right.
And putting that thought and that time into it is definitely something that is, that time is getting shortened. That we see these engagements of let's get it to the cloud, and people are gassed when let's talk about MRO 365, right? People like their jaw drops when I say, what are you going to do for backup? They're like, it's in the cloud. I'm like,
right.
Sure, but what are you going to do for backup?
Yeah, right.
If you delete something, you got like 30 days. I mean, do you have any kind of compliance or retention policies?
Right.
Do you need granular email backups because you have a V-level person that just nukes everything and they just nuke the New Year's bonus, if you will, or whatever. So you have to keep in mind that like you said, Chris, the cloud is a data center, somebody else's computer. Those bumper stickers running around, it's truly that, right? Now, that being said, there are protections. Like if a VM gets nuked because of a data, there's local protections and things that keep things safe. And I urge everyone to reach out or send us a message. I can send you the link to it. There's a matrix that Microsoft provides. It's called the Shared Responsibility Matrix. And that matrix is what I pound on the chest like King Kong when we're talking to new people about moving. There's I want you to understand what your organization's responsibility is in the cloud. there's a diagonal line that cuts through the matrix, and everything from that diagonal line down, Microsoft takes care of. Everything from that diagonal line up, you're responsible for. It's not, there's no magical server pixie dust like getting thrown out that says, oh, it just works.
Yeah. I mean, I think one big thing that certainly sets it apart from managing your own data center, managing your own in-house infrastructure, is the security aspect of things, right? I mean, the amount of investment that Microsoft and other cloud providers too, right? It's not just Microsoft. I mean, I'm pro cloud, no matter which cloud, as opposed to managing your own infrastructure in-house, and so the security risks that you have now, our big emphasis on the zero trust deployments this year is for that reason, right? Is to make sure that people are staying as secure as possible. But it certainly helps to sleep at night knowing that you've got 3,500 security professionals working on your behalf for Microsoft, as well as $5 billion or $4 billion a year, whatever it is. I think it's five. In investment, exactly. And so I think that really sets it apart. And obviously, things like the hardware and stuff like that. They're mass deploying this stuff. It's all standardized, and stuff like that. And so if there is an outage because of a hardware problem, generally it's something to be fixed very, very quickly, because there's a lot of things that are sort of thought of and taken care of, as well as really how things are destroyed, right? I mean, you can't walk into a Microsoft data center with a USB stick. You can't walk out with a USB stick. You can't, you can't walk out with a hard drive. I mean, they have to be shredded right there the moment they're pulled after they die, and things like that. I mean, so there's a lot of those security aspects that sort of set the cloud apart. Yeah. But I mean, it's still shared hardware, no matter how you break it down.
Yeah, I told someone once, they said, what's inside of one of those data centers? I said, imagine a big shelf, like a big metal shelf, and there's nothing but Xboxes all plugged together sitting on a shelf. The world run by Xboxes.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
They're so hard to get now, right?
Yeah.
I kid. So, one of the things I think that was worst of 21, I'm going to throw out there is, we shoot off a new exploratory space probe, and the sun shutter doesn't open. That's a lot of billions for it not to work.
Sure.
Just throwing that out there.
Just throwing that out there. I don't know what the actual issue was, but essentially it seems like something that should have been worked out ahead of time, you would think.
You would think. And it sounds like something you don't need to even test in zero gravity. I think actuators are actuators, right? That's good. So looking back, I didn't pull this together. I failed. I'll admit. I was going to go back and take the time to listen to the whole episode beginning to end of our prediction show and find out see who was most accurate. I did not do that. I got about 3/4 of the way through, and then life called. Sores exploded. Plumbing needed done. It was either have running water and sanitary, or get this part of the show done. So I kind of swung and missed. But I will throw back there. Chris, was that you that predicted a potential Adobe acquisition? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I told on our 99th recording, I told Dev, I told him straight up, I was like, ever since you said that, in the back of my head, like when I'm looking through like business stuff, and I'm always looking to see if Adobe was going to get gobbled up. I was
so anybody who heard that last year, hopefully they went and bought the stock, because it's been a good year for that. I still think it's very viable. I still think that we have strong partnerships. I mean, this is all publicly available information, right? We've got strong partnerships with Adobe. Their Experience Cloud, the Marketing Cloud, a lot of that stuff all runs on Azure. We work together on a lot of things as well. And the reality is, when technology companies sort of just would fit better together, it's kind of hard to deny. I think something like, and I don't remember if it was this year or last year, but when Salesforce acquired Tableau, I mean, it sort of made sense as their next generation, because Salesforce reporting tools aren't great, and so something like that makes a lot of sense. And so where I think that Adobe has their Creative Cloud, they have their marketing services, and things like that that are really really catered toward designers, and the fact that Apple no longer has the corner on that market, I still think it's a very very possible one. I think one of the other, I mean, that was the acquisition prediction, and I think just kind of remembering back, the other one that I'm sad to say came true as well is that I thought it was going to be that we'd be dealing with the pandemic stuff a year later. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised we're still dealing with this next year. I think we're getting smarter about it. But a good friend of mine the other day sent me a message, and he just said, my, the vaccine companies, um, they basically had really poor marketing around what the vaccine did, because it's like this amazing thing when people still get infected, but they're vaccinated, and it's just like, well, nobody ever said the vaccine was going to stop you from getting the virus, right? And so it's just look, it's constant conversation, whether it be with customers, whether it be with family, whatever. And I everybody make their own choices, do what you want to do. But at the same time, it still doesn't appear to be anything that's going away anytime soon.
Nope.
And it stinks, quite frankly.
Yeah. I kind of saw this somewhere. I can't remember where. I think Rose might have sent me a picture on Insta spam or something like that. It was said, is 2022 2022, and it was TOT to TOO. Is it like, are we gonna?
Right.
It's like the same thing all over again, right?
Right.
And I think I heralded your prediction there, and I jumped aboard that one. I know that for sure. And if you stop and look at it, one of the things we talked about in '99 was, or one of our review shows, we talked about, like, are we getting better at doing things by our state, right? Our state of, we don't know. And I think we have gotten better, but I think we can get a heck of a lot more better. So, like, that's not even good English, but those of you on the business side, not tech side, heed these words, right? You might have done things to enable your workers. You might have done things to turn on technology to make sure your line of business is working. You might have come up with creative in-office, out-office schedules. You might have flipped on Teams and Teams Voice. You might have done even competing products, Ring Central, boo. But any of these other competing products, Slack, which is another Salesforce-y thing, right? You could have done this, but that doesn't mean you're done. Right. You're not done yet. You're not done until we're at a place where we feel comfortable as businesses, as employees, as managers. Then we can say we can operate with efficiency. We can operate well. We're affecting the bottom line of our business in a productive way. And the fact that this is continuously changing, and again, regardless of whatever your choices are, the people's choices are leading to them to work in the way they're comfortable with. And geography is not a challenge anymore for hiring. We're seeing all this change, but we're not done. We have a long way to go. Even if you think you're done because it's kind of working for you, now's the time to stop and look and say, it might be working for me, but can it work for me better? And are there things we can do to enhance this thing we've done, or it's not working for us? Instead of throwing in the towel, say, what do we need to do to be better? So that's kind of my tagging on to the predictions, but also looking forward in 22, which is our next bit. But, bringing that together, I mean, we really need to, stop and look in. And from a Microsoft perspective, we have Viva. Viva's coming out in stages. That is very useful tooling to engage with people, to make people feel that they got the tools to do their job. There's other things with platforms that are changing in Azure. We're seeing, I'm having unprecedented amount of people saying, okay, I need to get to Azure now. I was like, didn't you try to do that like 2 years ago? And they're like, yeah, well, we just kind of turned some stuff on. I'm like, okay, having Azure Active Directory is like, you're not in Azure. I
Right.
mean, you are, but you're not. So now they're talking about full blown pivot and refactoring. And so some organizations are taking the time to say, okay, we understand now because we've have 18 months, 2 years of this. Now we can figure out how to chart the ways. Our jobs are not done. I think they're just beginning. Anything on that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, to take that one step further, I think that business leaders need to understand what works best for their company as opposed to what their biases are, right? I had a manager years back where I was consulting for the company. Everything was fine. I could work remote. I could work from the office, whatever. It didn't matter. And then I went and became a full-time employee, and then there was no working from home. There was a no work from home policy, and my question simply was, what difference does it make whether I'm here or at home? I, why was it different when I was a consultant, as opposed to now that I'm a full-time employee? And the only answer you could give me was that's the policy. And I think that to a certain extent, it's almost just a bias and a lack of trust, right? And if you're that person that says, well, no, we have to be here because I need to make sure that your butt's in the seat, either you need to be making a change about that employee, or you need to be making a change about the way that you manage people, in my opinion, right? I'm not a proponent either way, whether work from home or work collectively in an office. I think you do what works best for your situation. Being in sales, I have a very social job, right? So I want to be with my customers when I can. It's been almost 2 years of supporting largely the same customer base, and I've never met a fair amount of them in person, right? It's been all remote. Going to the manufacturing org, things are going to be different there. I feel like a lot more people are going to be there in person, and they're going to have taken different precautions. So it'll be interesting because I'll get a different perspective on things. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the fact that even if I'm not going to see customers, I'm still trying to get to our regional office once a week just to be in person with other people, right? I think it's healthy to be around other people, especially, a great place that I work where I've got the opportunity to work with some smart people, right? Where I can pick things up from them beyond just the social and networking aspects of the job.
Yeah, for sure. And it was posed to me recently, like during an interview process a couple months ago for a team member. Was posed to me. They're like, I'm pretty seasoned. I know my space, but I want to learn other spaces. How am I going to learn from you if I'm not seeing you? I'm like, well, there's ways. I mean, it is almost 2022. I mean, I didn't say it like that, but there are ways. But there is a value to sitting across the table from someone.
Yeah, riding shotgun, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. I do see it's not on one who embraces remote more than not. It's not lost on me the value of personal human contact and interaction. Though those who know me probably just chuckled at that statement came out of my mouth. But
but I mean, to that point, and look, I mean, we get older, we gain from experience and our personal experiences, right? That situation was 10 years ago, and I have a different understanding of the requirements of the job, requirements of the people, and things like that, where I have a different perspective than I did 10 years ago too. But then, I feel as though there's a generation of business leaders out there, that are nearing the retirement age, especially in like smaller companies and stuff like that. And, they just have this mindset, well, no, we need to have butts in seats. I need to be able to count the heads. Otherwise, I just don't trust what people are doing. And it's just like, I think that's more your problem than it is your employees' problem.
Yeah. And it reflects in them. Employees will pick up on that. Sure. And and they're gonna treat you accordingly if you're managing them that way, and they're also going to understand that they feel not trusted, and they're gonna like it builds even if it's subconsciously, it builds this dam, or between you and them, that they feel so they're more apt to, when something more appealing comes along or convenient, they're more apt to consider it, right? Not say they're going to take it, but they're more apt to consider it. And if you're really, really working hard to try to keep your people, you need to make sure you're keeping your people and doing what's right by them, right? So, yeah, I think more of the same. Looking at my notes over here, I think you're right. We're in for more of the same. Anything else for 22 that you can see coming down the line? I know that I mentioned briefly Viva and some other technologies. There are several different modern workplace throws. Dev, I'm going to toss it to you here in a minute to kind of capsulize some things. I know in our rewind, we put some rewind episodes up for to let people think of in the last year which episodes we thought were great, and one of them was the one you and I did, Chris, with the skills and abilities, and the other one was the meetings in the one with Ari, Dev. So we see a lot of development and involvement in that space. You want to touch on that real quick, or what are your thoughts for 22? Because I know you and I talked about this. There's a lot of that coming, right?
Yeah, no, I think like you said, kind of piggybacking off what you said before, like we've accelerated a lot of development in the modern workplace space in the past couple of years out of necessity, but there's still more we could do, and I think that that's definitely something we're going to continue to see in 22. Like there's specific to teams, there's the shared channels coming out. I'm curious to see how it's going to work. I think probably it's going to work similar to private channels. But not having to flip back and forth between tenants and collaborate more easily with people outside your org is going to be great.
I get an amen.
But yeah, I mean, there's that. Then there's Microsoft Loop, like that they announced at Ignite this past one.
Yep.
Which I think is going to be interesting to see how it fits in with the rest of the product suite.
Some of the Loop stuff, just for anybody that has made it this far. If you're allowed to, depends on your organizational policies. If you go into developer mode,
yeah,
you can turn Loop features on inside of Teams right now.
Yep.
Didn't say that out loud, but it's not like an unpublished thing. Like I'm going to get yelled at, or Chris is going to tell Redmond on me. I mean, it is a known thing, but I don't think they really want people just like pounding on it until it's ready. But if you want to test it and look, and don't use it for production, it is in test. Go into developer mode in your Teams client, and then you can start placing Loop components inside your Teams chats.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's definitely been fun. It's been fun seeing that. I know we played with it a little bit and how it works when Teams on the web and things like that. Yeah, I mean, with Loop, I think we're consistent, with Microsoft and so the metaverse and all that type of stuff with augmented reality. I mean, I'm curious to see where with 22 is going to go, because we've accelerated so much that I think that now we're going to think about, okay, how can we do things a little bit differently, which I think is what Loop is the answer to for a certain extent when it comes to collaboration. I think not saying we've taken Teams as far as it can go, but there's room for new ideas and different ways of working, and people work differently. I think the more I've sat on Loop, the more I've thought about it. I think it makes sense, and for a different type of collaboration platform, and it integrates with the rest of the Office suite. So,
I mean, just look at the new whiteboard is amazing.
Yeah.
It challenges like Mural and Miro. It's like, and now you can make parts of those as components. So the native Microsoft tooling, it does have an edge, even though you can embed Mural and Miro inside of Teams channels, and there's native applications that bolt that all together, because Microsoft is partner friendly. They are competitor friendly, but there is an advantage when you start thinking of the Loop and Loop components of being able to like take these little bits and grab Excel spreadsheet parts and grab little Word parts, and it does surface things in a much more logical way. And then once it evolves to its full potential, it's almost like OneNote because it's going to be like notebooks of stuff that are more collaborative and interactive as opposed to downloadable chunks of data like OneNote is. I'm not saying OneNote's displaceable or bad. I love OneNote. But it is definitely a game changer when it comes to that interoperability. The one thing you did mention that I kind of want to like expand on, or at least the concept fired a synapse in my brain. The one of the biggest things that I saw, and I think is going to be hugely pushed on, is Teams as a platform, as a delivery mechanism. And we've seen this over the past few years with build your team apps. They had the Teams Studio, but they've made it even more. They've almost made it low code, no code Power Apps model to push apps and services on top of Teams. So it seems like it's a delivery mechanism. Do you guys agree with that, or am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, I mean, we I think we touched on that in one of the episodes that just where it's becoming a platform. I would like to see more of it. I will say that it's still a bit clunky. So if you're, so I said, okay, instead of browsing Power BI on the web or using a desktop app, I'm going to use it in Teams, just for something different to do. And what I ran into was, I'd be on Power BI, I'd be kind of playing around with the report, but then I'd get a notification, that somebody pinged me, you know what I mean? Or even just there's some activity in my Teams channels. And I had to browse away from that report, and it wasn't abundantly clear to me how to get back to where I was. And there wasn't a way to right click and pop open the all up chat window or the all up activity window to be able to kind of view it in a different way without disrupting what I was currently doing in Teams. Or take it another way and think of it as modules within the screen, right? And being able to have your Power BI module here and your Dynamics module here and whatever, right? So I fully agree where you're coming from. And, I know Slack has done similar things where, they've got an API available, they've got an SDK available where you can, build these apps within it. But until it more sort of gets seamless or streamlined, I've got some challenges with it.
Yeah, agreed. And I think their philosophy has been, if you remember, I think it was a year ago, they said you can pin pretty much anything to the app bar as long as it's an app register. And I think that was part of their philosophy is like you can have these apps, but to your point, they're not the only thing you can pop out are chats with people, direct chats.
Right.
So I'm sure the engineering team's on this, user voice, if they're whatever they're using for user voice these days, is probably rife with that, right?
Yeah, probably. And I mean, I think that, as a whole, the idea that they've made some of the bare bones features of Teams available for free, goes a long way. I think they were actually a little slow to make that happen, especially in, with the, significant amount of competition that was out there. And unfortunately, one of the main competitors got a big leg up as a result, right? Because it took too long to make it free to everybody. That being said, the amount of monthly active users, from pre-pandemic till post to current is just insane, right? I mean, the amount of people who are using it daily is insane. So
I agree with you 1,000%. Any other thing, any bold predictions you want to call a shot or anything, point to the
well, Viva came up, and I think there was a bit of an eye roll in there, or a proverbial eye roll in there, but at the same time, I think we're going to see a lot of effort and focus put into Viva. The idea of it is fantastic. It gives you that opportunity to see what's happening throughout your organization. It centralizes all of the things that you could possibly need from a company standpoint. It's kind of it's a next gen better application of what like a SharePoint main site was, right, or still is in some cases. And I think you'll see a lot more content come out with that. I know that there's going to be a big push from a development standpoint. I think that if on the semi bold side, I'm gonna disagree with Dev when it comes to the meta and the mesh stuff.
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna see anything crazy happen this year with it. I think it's too immature. I think, so I just got finished reading Ready Player Two. I started with Ready Player One, of course, and I just finished reading Ready Player Two, and even just the idea of what their metaverse is like. I mean, we are so far away from any of that, and I know technology can be fast, but I just the haptics and everything else, we are just so far from any of that being real. I mean, even Oculus, right? It seems like cool technology. I've put on a headset a couple times, but I mean, with your controllers or whatever those things are called, joysticks or whatever, until we can actually have like real haptics, I think we're still a long ways away, personally.
So Dev, I see him typing. He's buying a ticket to Vermont for a throwdown.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm gonna see you in the jungle, just bobbing your head.
Dev, any final bold predictions? Are you going to call Adobe this year and snake it out from underneath him?
I think I made the prediction last year that Salesforce was going to buy Zoom because they bought Slack.
Mm-hmm.
I still think, even though Zoom is right for the take, I still think Zoom is right for the taking. There's somebody else, I don't know, maybe it's not Salesforce, maybe it's somebody else. I don't know, maybe it's Oracle. I don't know, because they seem to be buying random things,
or maybe they're just a cash cow and they're going to sit there and keep milking it.
Yeah. But I still think Zoom is going to be bought in some capacity, or they're going to merge with somebody, because it's not a niche product necessarily, but as far as where everything's headed, they're part of a bigger picture when it comes to collaboration. And I think it would just it's too much of an opportunity, I feel like, for someone to not pass it up, and either they buy somebody, or somebody buys them. That's my bold prediction. I think Microsoft's going to get more involved in the ed space and take some of the market share away from Chromebooks.
We started that, right? We started that. I'm going to be curious to see how that goes. But actually, to the Zoom point, I don't know if you guys watch Succession, but season 3 just wrapped up, and there's a big focus on sort of the old school media company compared to the new school media company, right? And so, when you think about some of these old legacy companies out there, the AT&Ts, the Verizons, right? Does an acquisition like that sort of take them to the next generation of, whatever you want to call it, telephony experience, right? Obviously, it's no longer telephony by any means, right? But does that help them come to the sort of the next level besides 5G, right? So I wouldn't be shocked to see something like that happen.
Didn't AT&T buy Blue Jeans? Didn't somebody buy Blue Jeans, some big company, or one of
Verizon.
those?
I want to say
Verizon did.
Yeah, Verizon
did. But
what's happened with that?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I can't. I mean, it's been at least 2 to 3 years since anybody's even said we use Blue Jeans. I just don't hear it anymore. I don't know. You guys may run into it more. You probably talk to more people, but
once a year. Once a year. That's it. And when somebody sends it across, I send a Teams meeting and say, "Hey, join this instead."
That good, huh?
Yeah. So I thought one of you two would have said that Microsoft was going to make an announcement as a bold prediction, that they were going to make an announcement that Azure DevOps will be sunset in 3 years and you need to use GitHub for everything. I thought for sure one of you two was going to throw that out. ITs. That's never going to happen.
All the signals that we get is it's just not going to, that they're going to continue to work on both. I mean, there are still differences in the two, right? Yep. And, I think that where Microsoft has such a they really planted their flag on the hybrid idea, right? If you saw the announcements around SQL 2022, it's more about hybrid. It's more about, okay, you're going to deploy this on-prem, and oh, by the way, you're going to be able to seamlessly back it up to Azure, and all these new things. They're all very much centered around, we're staying hybrid, we're not changing this, and so where the feature sets are different, I think the general intent of the products is still somewhat different. I still think we're a ways off from any kind of consolidation.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And so one of my predictions on my list, one of my last notes I have here is that there is going to be an emphasis on hybrid period in general across all services across all. I mean, people get their little minds blown or big minds blown or medium-sized minds blown. I said, you can run logic apps in your own data center. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, you can. And we see some of the challenges with the cloud and connectivity in general. Sure. We're expanding connectivity for end users, but we've not done much for the business side. It's pretty much fiber connections between places, right? Now, how are we going to get to that next level? Well, maybe we split up our workloads. Microsoft's philosophy a while ago was let's get things to the edge. Let's do stuff computing. Well, that's because we're developing connectivity on the edge faster than we're developing connectivity in the data center with 5G and all this other stuff. So, calling the shot, I think you're going to hear a lot of that hybrid conversation for two reasons. Reason number one, to kind of allay the fears that people not rip their stuff out of the cloud and go right back to their little hidey holes in their dark server rooms with flashing lights and lots of wires, because that's not the right thing to do. So we're gonna satisfy saying, okay, you have some sensitive workloads and you want to control that experience. Well, let's split. You have the ability to bring some of that down to your own data center. Number two, to increase that migration path that has exponentially occurred since the start of the pandemic, to keep that path forward, saying you're not moving to the data center or moving a good majority of your stuff from your data center to Azure because of this unique workload or this, whatever investment you've already made that you need to write off over the next 5-7 years. Well, let's put some of it there, some of Azure in there, or some of the logic apps or what have you. So you can get the benefits from there. And then you can over time move things. I think you're going to hear that. This is just my opinion. I think you're going to hear a lot of that messaging. If you don't hear it from other people, you'll hear it from us here every week, Friday, usually around midday, we'll drop a podcast. But I think you're going to hear that. You agree with that, Chris? I mean, you're there, right?
Yeah. I mean, so when you think about, I mean, let's call it out, right? Azure Stack, right, allows you to run the Azure environment in your data center, on your cruise ship, in your remote location where you only have internet, once a week or whatever it happens to be, and it gives you that Azure environment, and new features are being added all the time to that, to that capability. And there are still folks out there who feel more comfortable and confident having the hardware in their data center, but they also want to be able to, use cutting edge technology, bring in top level talent, and top level talent wants to work on the latest and greatest, and so, I think that's very feasible. I think that there are going to be holdouts no matter what we do. There are going to be holdouts who want to still continue to buy those servers, and the Dells and HPs and all those folks of the world, they're very thankful for that, but it's still, I think that it's very likely, and I think hybrid in general, going the other way, being that you're going to start to see more companies, smaller companies, start to look at, okay, what can the cloud do for me? Not as a big bang, but as an incremental step toward, adding that hardening or that resiliency that we need, that we just didn't quite have last year too. So I think it's going to go both ways.
Yep, for sure. All right, gentlemen. I think we finished off 100 pretty good. Any final comments? Anything else we want to add?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, be safe.
I literally just bought my plane ticket to Vermont.
Nice. Come on up. Yeah. Well, as you can see, I got darker and darker as the video went on here. I'm not quite at pitch black out there, but it's getting dark quick. So to make sure my kids are inside at this point. But looking forward to 2022. Looking forward to getting a better handle on the pandemic. Right. I think that as we go through time, people understand it more. Fortunately, the CDC or WHO or somebody, they just kind of pulled back and said, well, if you're asymptomatic, you don't have to quarantine as long and stuff like that. I mean, I think that's all good stuff, right? As opposed to sort of looking at it and having the same old information, day after day. It's like, okay, we can evolve these things, and work together to make it make sense for people. So, looking forward to hopefully pulling out of this thing by the end of the year.
The more we learn over time, the more educated we can be, the better prescriptive we can be with our guidance, right?
Agreed.
When you don't know, lock it all down. We know a little bit more, lock it down for the more we know, the better we are, right?
Right.
So I agree with you there. That's a good send off. Dev, any send off you want to have for 21 and into 22?
No, I mean, it's gonna be exciting. We're gonna do it all over again, and we'll be here again next year. But happy New Year to everybody, and I'm excited to see where things go. I mean, I think, like I said, we've made a lot of progress over the past 2 years from a technological standpoint. I'm curious to see where, as we're starting to hopefully exit the pandemic and get back to a somewhat sense of normalcy, as we crawl towards that. I'm curious to see where it goes. So.
Yeah, as they say in Southwest Pennsylvania, good Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise. That's actually
that's the only place to say it.
You are correct. So I just want to take a moment. We thank everybody at the top of the hour. Thank you all again. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dev, our families for putting up with our nonsense. And again, Aspirant, our sponsor, we really appreciate you making this possible. We also thank, Ari for this past year. We also want to throw out there one more thing. So this is the video. This is the 100th podcast, but this is the live stream of it. So it's getting there. You can find this on Spotify. Pains me to say Apple Podcasts. You can find it everywhere. So please subscribe, give us comments in LinkedIn. We are a very interactive bunch. So please throw out some notes. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you thought of our last hour and a half of ramblings. We are a very interactive group. We appreciate you as listeners. We appreciate you as viewers, and stay tuned because there's a lot of good stuff coming down the line in 22 from the show and also from MAIT Pro. We have another deck of people teed up to get their insights from an executive level, and also we're dragging a whole bunch more aspiring people over to that show too now to get our insights there. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you, and happy New Year. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Have a good one, guys. Happy New Year.